Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello and welcome back to the channel where you join me today in Woking, England at the home of McLaren, here at the McLaren Technology Centre, right beside the boulevard, where just over 2 years ago, right over there is where I took delivery of my Senna. They have a lineup of the Formula 1 cars, new and old, the McLaren F1s and some of the recent production cars as well. But I've come today to take my first look at the brand new McLaren Artura. Now this is a very significant car for McLaren. This is their first series production hybrid supercar, following the learnings from the likes of the P1 and the Speedtail, entirely designed and built from the ground up, all new, with a 3-litre twin-turbo V6 combined with the hybrid system for a total of 680 horsepower, mid-engine layout of course, but so many things that are new and that today we can discover together as I take a first look, going through the ins and outs of this, both the exterior and the interior, to discover then the new McLaren Artura. This is it then, the first time I've laid eyes on the new Artura, even myself, coming here today to what's called the front of house here at the McLaren Technology Centre, where the boulevard stretches down past the Formula 1 cars, the F1s and all sorts of other very special machines. But this is what we have come to see today, and we'll start with a walk around to go through some of the details before taking a more full look inside and out at this incredible thing. The McLaren Artura then, the name itself, Artura, is a mix, a blend you could say, of art and future. McLaren very much looking towards the next generation, effectively replacing the outgoing Sports Series models, the 570S along with the 600LT, and sitting in the current lineup above the McLaren GT, which is of course more of a Grand Tourer, but beneath the 720, the 720 Spider and the 765LT. This is a car very much targeting daily driving, that kind of Porsche 911 Audi R8 style setup, a car that is comfortable and easy to get to live with, to use, but introduces a hybrid system at a more affordable price point than of course the P1 when it arrived, and some of the other hybrid options available in the supercar market. You have a total power output from the engine of 680 horsepower, which means this can still do your 0 to 62 miles an hour, 100 kilometers an hour in 3 seconds. It can do 0 to 200 kilometers an hour, 124 miles per hour in just 8.3, and go to a top speed of 205 miles per hour, 330 kilometers an hour, and of course it can do it in style. I'll give you a quick look here at the new interior. Lots of things in here have changed. The instrument binnacle is attached to the steering column when you move it. You have the active dynamics controls up there on the top of the console as well. We've got the new Club Sport seats and plenty of other controls we're going to take a full look through. But this particular car is in Flux Green, this metallic pearlescent green, as you can see under the lighting here, standing very bright. A new wheel design now showed as well with the Pirelli B0 Corsa Cyber tyres, which actually feed back live data to the car's systems from sensors as soon as you get it started up. But there are things, for example, that you don't notice at first. Down here, there's an integrated sensor for an adaptive cruise control system, along with the 360 cameras, things that you don't tend to find on cars at this end of the spectrum. That means, of course, the emergency braking assist, the adaptive cruise to adjust your speed automatically in line with other cars when you're driving out on the roads. But this is a car that they say will offer two totally different driving experiences, from the electric modes, where when you put it into E mode, it will do up to 19 miles or 30 kilometers of full electric driving, or on the other hand, when you go up into sport or even into track mode, it will be as dynamic as the outgoing 600LT. Talking design of this car, there are a few immediately noticeable McLaren traits that I see when I walk around here. For example, these flying buttresses and the curved rear windscreen, as found on the previous 570S, being carried through, of course, for their aerodynamic capabilities as well as the design. Then towards the rear, you have this low scooped single clam around the whole of the rear deck, rather familiar from the design of the P1 in fact. If you come down here towards the rear to the bumper, you have these side shapes as well, reminiscent of those found on the 650S. If we come through, this side sculpture and shaping, again a very McLaren style trait to incorporate airflow into the design, and there's a very clever intake for the cooling down towards the base of this as well. If you come to the very front, headlights, this McLaren Speedmark style shape, like we've seen on the 720S. Quick reminder, the McLaren logo here with the Speedmark, you can see that carried through to the headlight design, as well as the cooling that is part of this as well. Always both functional as well as looking the part also. Even here, the louvers that you have over the arches to reduce the swelling air that you get building up when driving at speed, these are reminiscent of the 600LT. So you can see all of these different McLaren models bringing design traits through into the Artura. To come around though and talk about this entirely new in-house developed hybrid powertrain. Now this is a big change from just about every McLaren model that's come previously, in the sense that the Artura was developed from the ground up, with all of the different design and engineering teams being able to work together to optimize efficiencies, to introduce all sorts of clever technology, some of which we can take a look at, and of course to house the new hybrid system. Fundamentally, back here we've got the 3-litre twin turbocharged V6, replacing of course the twin turbo V8s that we found in just about all previous McLaren models. This is a hot V, but it's a very small, very short, very lightweight power plant in comparison with the previous iteration. You can see the turbochargers run just from about here, and the whole power plant only goes up to about this area, so 19 centimeters shorter than the V8, but also 50 kilos lighter, while producing 585 horsepower just from the combustion engine. Now also here you'll see the powertrain chimney, very clever piece of design. The hot air can escape out through this literal chimney on the rear deck, and then with the shape of the airflow and aerodynamics working here, that's helped to be removed as fast as possible. Now that on its own would already be a lot of power, but that's actually combined with the electric system, which comprises a 7.3 kilowatt hour battery, which sits low just behind the occupants, which is built into its own cell as part of the carbon fibre monocoque. McLaren now developing and manufacturing those in-house as well. So the carbon fibre chassis, which is both very lightweight but also very, very stiff and strong, giving great driving dynamics as well as safety and security as well. Combining this then with the battery pack feeding through an electric motor with a third clutch. It's got an 8-speed dual clutch gearbox as well as an additional clutch for the electric system, sends all of the power to the rear wheels, giving you 680 in total, 95 that comes from the electric side, 585 that comes from the combustion engine, along with 720 newton meters of torque. But fundamentally, this operates in different ways depending on your driving mode, in configuration with the saving of the battery power, conserving or draining by giving more performance and torque fill, and of course interacting with the traction control systems as well. But what you've effectively got here now is a new gearbox, the 8-speed dual clutch, and you've also got the electric system, which operates, by the way, in reverse, entirely on E mode. So if you want to drive in reverse, it will be silent. Perhaps you'll have it idling if it's charging up the battery packs in the process, but quite interesting to eventually find out how that works when you're driving it in the real world. The more time that I'm spending looking at the car though, the more details I'm starting to notice around it. For example, here you have the LED daytime running light integrated just beneath that lip, sitting tidally below. If we come through, something about this section is that you have the split levels of radiators, if you can just see in there, with the vane in the centre, akin to how it was done on the 12C. Something changed here is to have a lip over the button just behind to open up the doors, which then greet us with this interior. But before we take a full look at that, I want to point out something about the doors themselves. You'll spot down here that they're actually part of the side sill. The body is very clean by having the minimal number of panels possible, but more than that, this lower section is actually part of the cooling that continues back through here with additional high temperature radiators. So rather than having to have huge gaping openings on the side, it can use clever airflow through other parts of the bodywork, like we've seen on a number of other McLaren models up to this point. Then we get to the interior of Artura, where there are many new design elements. Again, an all new interior with lots of characteristics and things to take a look at. I'll take a seat on board in a second, but before doing so, I want to talk about the side sills. Now, when McLaren Automotive introduced the MP412C about a decade ago with its carbon fibre monocage, one of the inconveniences was having a very high side sill, which meant it was difficult to be able to climb over to enter the vehicle. Since then, with the arrival of the Sports Series, the 570S, and also with the 720S and the McLaren GT, this area has been significantly opened up. But there's been another change again for Artura, which is that instead of having the optional carbon finisher over the entirety of the top, it's now presented just around the side to have that carpet so you don't scratch scratch the carbon on your way into the vehicle, where now we have these new Club Sport seats. You can have the car with the regular, more comfortable seats, but this is a halfway house, so to speak, a carbon bucket, but with the option to recline it and pull it further forwards, all in one motion should you wish. A few things that stand out though: a slightly new look to the steering wheel, the active dynamics control panel that you have on either side of the binnacle up top, the new floating screen in the centre. Again, plenty of details. So let me take a seat on board then, climb in here carefully to this prototype of the McLaren Artura and take a look around, where you can see these lovely pinstripe details and the way it's all presented. A lot of work has gone into this model, of course. Lovely details to the finishes, embroideries, and like I said, all of those pinstripes. In the centre, you have this 8-inch floating tablet style display. Gone are all of the buttons and controls. Instead, touch interface with a single toggle here at the side and a button to press that in. Sitting just behind it is a cup holder, only really practical for the passenger to reach around towards that. We've got the start button, the drive, neutral, reverse toggles, just as you would find in the other McLaren models. This is actually the key for the car, which you can also stow away in a little pouch that you have just here at the front of the seat. Leave it back there for the moment, where you've got these perfectly shaped sections if you wanted to be able to, let's say, pop your phone for storage just in there nice and easily. You've got another cup holder just here in front of the armrest, which houses a whole host of different sockets: USB-C, regular USB, the storage area, and the 12-volt cigarette socket at the back as well. But let's come up to the driver zone, to the steering wheel and the display. Like previous McLarens, you have the shift paddles mounted on the back of the steering wheel that rotate with the wheel. They operate with the rocker style, so you can either press it or pull it on either side and it will move both in sync, enabling you to go up or down on either side. But completely new, as found on the Elva, are having the Powertrain and the handling toggles as part of active dynamics, now reached just by a quick press of the button with your fingertips up on the binnacle. So if you do use the electric adjustment for the steering column you have around here, the whole thing will move in harmony with one another, meaning this is always easily accessible, always in reach. This will take you through a series of different modes. For the handling, you have comfort, sport and track. And for the powertrain, by default, it starts in E mode, then comfort, then sport, then track, which all have a slightly different operation, of course, of the hybrid system and how it all interlinks. In here, we've also got the Bowers & Wilkins sound system, the 360 cameras, we've got the nose lift button, we've got the lane recognition. As I mentioned, it has the adaptive cruise control sensor up front, also using cameras up here mounted on the windshield. So the car is very well loaded in terms of technology, but also comfort features as you look around. Nice materials, nice quality, the air conditioning vents across the dash. Up here there's a separate mirror that you have behind the sun visor, so you don't have to pull that down should you wish to leave it all up in place. In the center you have the SOS button for the connected services to get assistance or breakdown as might be required. Down here you've got the adaptive cruise control toggle. On the left side you've got the toggle as well to go through your menus and controls. Electric handbrake sits just down here, your light controls here as well. If I just pull the door down, you can see in here you've got the door latch release and the window controls just there as well in front of this storage bucket that you have out in front of those. So it feels like a very welcoming environment. Great view, as you can see, through the door mirrors and through this very large storage area that you have behind. I say storage area, it's not technically supposed to be used for that purpose, but of course you could squeeze some additional luggage back here if required, and it gives an area of space if a Spider model should eventually arrive, we could say. And then that view through where the floating buttresses hover out back behind the window with great visibility, to be honest. A very all-round view when you're seated actually inside the car. If we just open this back up, you can see the hinge. It opens very vertically, doesn't need too much width, so actually quite convenient overall. And then again, you've got the seat, by the way, which you can manually slide forwards and back, and then there's an electric toggle at the side to change the recline. You can just climb straight on out over the edge of the sill, but we have the carbon fibre turntable here, and then close the door back down. I do love that aero work that they've integrated into the door there. To explain a little bit more about Artura's different driving modes, it will always start, as I said, in the E mode. So using the electric motor on its own, that's either for quiet getaways, quiet driving around city centres, or returning home at night, whatever it might be. You can do that up to a maximum of 30 kilometres or 19 miles just from the battery power alone. If you then turn the powertrain up into comfort mode, it will use the combustion engine where required to keep the battery topped up, but of course run as a hybrid operation, switching backwards and forwards seamlessly, firing up the engine when it's required. If you then go into sport or in track modes, they will effectively use the combustion engine in harmony with the electric motor in order to torque fill, so you get the instant torque that comes from the electric motor, while then also being able to use the maximum power, of course, out on track or for sporty driving, with the fundamental difference between sport and track modes not being the way the hybrid powertrain couples, but rather to do with the gearbox and how fast it shifts between gears, and of course also the traction control system, which on this car is very clever, as I said, working in harmony with knowing the tyre pressures and temperatures that are sent from the sensors to the car itself. But the car, in terms of technology, is leaps and bounds ahead. It actually uses Ethernet cables as opposed to having a traditional wiring loom, which means all of the ECUs are connected and can talk to each other very, very efficiently. And as you actually walk up towards the car, it detects that you're arriving and actually wakes up, starts all of the computers before you've even taken a seat on board to start waking up, to be ready to have the navigation system up and running, for example, whatever it might be. So there's no waiting. You walk up to the car, take a step on board, and off you can go. McLaren have also integrated their hydraulic suspension into Artura, something they've become famed for from the 12C onwards, with the exception of the Sports Series, by having the hydraulic suspension giving the opportunity for incredible driving dynamics, but also great comfort as well, a huge breadth of ability. One thing that's different though in terms of the braking and of course carbon ceramic rotors is that they don't operate for regenerative braking of the battery pack. The 7.4 kilowatt battery pack won't be charged up by the braking, which is of course a different approach, but very much wanting this to give the feel that you expect, that real direct feel, as opposed to having to change it in lieu of being able to obtain a little bit more charge. Now you might be wondering, carrying around all of the hybrid systems, the motors, the batteries, and about the weight penalties that are incurred, and the car weighs 1,498 kilos. So there is a small penalty, but we're still talking a car that is lighter than its class competitors that aren't hybrid. And that comes from McLaren's extensive use of carbon fibre, but also many of the internal teams who have worked on their lightweight projects before, taking that ethos of being able to shave weight wherever possible to just about every element of the vehicle overall to create that finished product. Now, one thing I noticed visually walking around it is the wheelbase length. You have quite an extended nose of the car, but the rear wheels are tucked right back towards the very, very rear, of course, to house that power plant just in front, but it gives it these very sporty proportions. And we've not really talked much about the visual side of things. Of course, back here, you've got the twin tailpipes setting right up to the top, the star we've seen on a number of McLaren models, but a big change now going for a name, Artura, as opposed to the numerical system that came before with the 570S, the 570 GT, the 600 LT, the 620R, for example. Artura being that mix of art and the future. Down here, all of the exposed carbon fibre. This is the heat shield to protect from the temperatures of the exhaust, where you can actually see just a little bit in here, hiding behind heat shields, of course, but the most direct path possible for the exhaust air to escape from the back of the car. Down here, the gearbox sits low at the rear inside this carbon diffuser piece, helping with the airflow of the car as it travels. The wheel design, as mentioned, 20-inch wheels at the rear, 19-inch wheels at the front, slightly smaller than the GT model, which gives a different visual proportion. Around to the front again, all of the cooling, all of the openings that you have around these different areas, towing eye cover seated just here, and then more openings even here to work with some of the aero as well that goes through the underneath of the car to help optimize everything for the driving side of it, but also the visual side of it, keeping it very clean in its appearance. Very few panels, as I mentioned earlier. You can choose to opt for a contrast roof section, so everything here from the A-pillar towards the rear of the buttresses would be, for example, in gloss black to give a contrast and a very different appearance for the car overall. You can also give it carbon fibre components, visual carbon here on the louvres and the mirror caps, for example, in addition to the splitter and the bumper that you found and the diffuser that you find as well, also around towards the rear. On that point though, I think I will wrap up for today. My first look at this very, very significant car, a huge step towards the next generation of McLaren with the launch of Artura, a car that I think we were all waiting to arrive, moving into a completely new architecture, new engine, new gearbox, new characteristics, their first series production hybrid as well, and an awesome opportunity to come here to the McLaren Technology Centre to take my first ever look. Like I said, the first time that I've personally been able to see the car myself, and I cannot wait now to get behind the wheel, to take it for a drive and to see what it's like on the road and track. So hopefully that will happen before long. Stay tuned to be sure to see that as and when. For now though, thank you very much for watching. Do let me know what you think of Artura in the comments below. But that's it for this time. Thanks for watching, guys. Thank you for your support as always. I'll see you again very soon. Cheers.